Terry Taylor. He's not an office stooge. He's not a weasel. He's not a liar. He's not a con man. He doesn't talk out of both sides of his neck. He's not an asshole. No, I defended Terry Taylor, and come to find out, Tommy, I hate to be wrong, but I admit it when I am wrong, and I was wrong. Terry Taylor is all those things because he turned around, and he didn't tell all these people that I mentioned by name that I liked them and I wished them well and I didn't want them to be mad at me for knocking TNA. He turned around and he forwarded my email to Vince Russo.
Wow.
Because Terry Taylor is a backstabbing prick. And now it's been revealed, it's been proven. I've got it here on paper. Because the lawyers that they spent $500 an hour to have write me a fucking nasty letter sent me a copy of the email that Terry Taylor sent to Vince Russo, forwarded in my email. Can you believe it, Tommy? I was wrong. I'm not a good judge of character. I don't know what to do about this because I was wrong all along about Terry Taylor. But anyway, so basically, and you know, see, now here's the one thing that I don't agree with Terry Taylor about, and I never said a word to him about it. We never had any debates, but Terry Taylor's one of these Christians. He's one of these born-again fucking people, and of course, Vince Russo's born again, and I've said it many times, I didn't agree with the first one, so naturally I ain't going to agree with the second one. But Terry Taylor, never trust a Christian. That's the word from Cornette's commentary. Never trust a Christian because they'll stab you in the back every time. I believe they're the people that hung Jesus up on the fucking deal or whatever. Never trust a Christian because they'll stab you in the back every time. Because Terry Taylor, apparently because he now has to kiss the same ass he was kissing 15 years ago that wouldn't employ him in WCW, Eric Bischoff, or because he's scared for his fucking job, or because he's scared for his Christian buddy somehow, he stabbed a friend of his of 30 years in the back and turned around and forwarded this. Now, you know, I wasn't really upset the idea that Vince Russo would see this, but now let me ask you another question, Tommy. Of course, the lawyers, they may be calling you saying, take this down, so everybody download this and spread it around to all the websites. Record it, because it may not be available long. But, Tommy, what do you do when somebody calls you a no-good motherfucker and a nasty fucking prick and an abominable son of a bitch and they hope you fucking get hit by a bread truck or whatever the fuck? You can go to JimCornette.com and you can read everything I said because I don't make any secrets about anything, and if I say something, I stand by it. So it's all up there verbatim for everybody to see. But what do you do if somebody calls you these names and tells you what they think of you? You either do one of two things. You either ignore it, or as a man, you call the motherfucker up and you say, okay, what time and where do you want to meet to fucking hash this out, motherfucker? But no, because Vince Russo, and once again proving my point, I've lost a friend, but at least I've gained validation. Vince Russo doesn't call me up and say, hey, motherfucker, you know what, everybody wants to know, so, you know, why don't we do something about it? What he does is he goes crying, just like he used to go crying to Vince McMahon when I would knock him and say things to him in front of the boys when he ran his fucking dick licker and fucking disrespected me. And I would fire back. He'd go running to Vince McMahon, and here would have to come Jim Ross to ask me what I said. And then I'd tell him. And then JR would say, well, yeah, you should have said that because he was an asshole, and then he'd go back to Vince McMahon. Every time somebody says something to Vince Russo, as a matter of fact, when unnamed WWF employees back in the year 2001 gave me Vince Russo's number because they were upset because they went to Atlanta and they had been friends with Vince Russo when he worked in the office in WWF with them, and they went to Atlanta and called him up. He wouldn't even return their calls. He wouldn't even speak to them. He wouldn't even get together with them to have lunch or whatever. So they gave me his number, and I called him up and said, you know what, you motherfucker, you fucking cut my balls off, you fucked a lot of people, and you're a fucking asshole. And he hung up on me, and he called, this is when he's working for WCW now, he called the WWF Human Resources Department, and he said, Jim Cornette threatened me and my family. I never said anything about his family. He's got a wife that must be a saint for putting up with him. He's got some kids that last time I saw them, they were fucking 10 years old, and they were misbehaved, but I don't care about his kids. I've only had a problem with him, but he always goes crying to somebody else. So in this case, he went crying, I guess, to Dixie Carter. And Dixie Carter, because she doesn't have to worry about money because her father is a multi-millionaire. She calls an attorney in Beverly Hills, California, with offices in New York, by the way, according to their letterhead, and they send me a legal letter saying, you have issued terroristic threats to Vince Russo. and that is contrary to statute such and such, a federal code in such and such a country. You know, you can read it on JimCornette.com. Go to Cornette's commentary. You can read it verbatim. But basically, you know, I never said I was going to kill him. I just said I wished he would die. I have dreams of killing him. But last time I checked in the United States of America, it's legal to dream about doing shit that you'd like to do, but you know you aren't going to do. Because, let me make this plain right now. A lot of people that are close to me, friends and relatives and et cetera, have sworn to me that they would never let me in the same place with Vince Russo at the same time again because they know that my temper would get the better of me. So they're never even going to let me in the same city as Vince Russo. And secondly, apparently Vince Russo will never ever come to me and knock on my door and say, hey, let's settle this, because according to the letter I got from these attorneys, Vince Russo is, and I quote, in extreme fear of me. And he mentioned his family also, like I'd threatened his family. His family is the innocent victims of genetics in this case, and it's not their fault that they're related to this abominable prick. But anyway, the point is, Cornette and Russo is going to go down in history just like Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin. One of those things everybody wanted to know what was going to happen, but it's never going to take place. And Cornette and Russo is going to be right up there in that pantheon of immortal matchups that never take place because people won't let me be around him, and he don't want none of me. So he ought to know it's just that he's such a gutless coward that even when people talk bad about him, he naturally, instead of standing up as a man with a ball, just one ball, just if he had one ball, oh my God, I just wish he had one ball, but he don't. So it's never going to happen. And I didn't threaten to kill him. I said I wished he would die. I wish a lot of people would. I wish that people who molest children would die. But they don't. Seems like the pricks live to be 90 and the good folks, you know, I could think Brian Hildebrand and Canyon just recently, they go at an early age, but the pricks live forever. So anyway, the point is he took a personal email sent to a friend of mine for 30 years trying to tell him that I had no ill will against him and his other co-workers because of this one asshole, and he made a big, apparently, federal case out of it. And TNA Wrestling, they've hurt my feelings because they think that Jim Cornette is going to be scared of a fucking legal letter. I got news for you. Until I commit an actual crime, or actually, until I even attempt to commit an actual crime, keep the fuck your nose out of my fucking business. I'm going to knock Vince Russo verbally, according to the facts, until I'm dead, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. And I ain't going to get scared by this. And you know what? They're trying to cost me money because, you know, Dixie's father has millions of dollars. They'll take me to court. How would it look, Tommy, if a multi-millionaire like Dixie Carter's father took poor old Jim Cornette, the most controversial man in the wrestling business who just speaks his mind, and according to what I hear from the fans at the fan fests and the shows and et cetera, they agree with me. How would it look if they took me to court because I said that Vince Russo was an abominable prick? How would that look? That wouldn't look too good. It would look like they were big bullies, right? And you know what the other thing is? Nobody would have ever heard about this. It was an email between me and my former friend of 30 years that I never said a word about, didn't send to anybody else. Nobody would have heard about it, except they want to make a big deal out of it. So, hold on. If you hear this sound, this is me wiping my ass with their legal letter. They got bigger problems. They need to figure out who murdered TNA Wrestling. Was it Mr. Bischoff in the kitchen with a knife? Was it Mr. Hogan in the garden with a lead pipe, or was it Colonel Russo in the drawing room with a candlestick? Who murdered TNA Wrestling? Don't fuck with Jim Cornette for writing a letter to a former friend of his that he thought was somebody that he needed to explain why he was verbally knocking TNA. Don't make a big deal like I'm stalking Vince Russo, like I'm circling the block in my fucking SUV trying to assassinate this guy. He's not worth the bullets it would take and the powder it would take to blow him to hell. I'm not going to do a thing to Vince Russo because Vince Russo's doing a good enough job of burying himself with the horse shit and the garbage that he puts on television every Monday night.